Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The cyborg's metallic fist whistled past Jack Hunt's ear, missing him by millimeters. Neon lights from the underground arena cast shifting shadows across the 2-meter-tall machine's chrome plating as it pivoted for another strike. The crowd's roars echoed off the station's metal walls, their excitement building as Jack dodged yet another potentially lethal blow. "Come on, Tin Can," Jack taunted, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "My grandmother's targeting system was better than yours, and she was blind in both eyes." The cyborg's red optical sensors flared. Its voice emerged as a mechanized growl. "Your statistical chances of survival decrease by 27% every minute you refuse to use your arms. Hunt." Jack flashed his trademark grin, sweat gleaming on his forehead. What can I say? I like a challenge. The underground arena of Omega-7 Station had seen its share of impossible fights, but this one was different. The legendary Iron Legs Hunt had not only accepted a challenge against a military-grade combat cyborg, he'd handicapped himself by refusing to use his arms. The betting pools were going crazy. A massive right hook from the cyborg forced Jack into a backflip. He landed gracefully, noting the worn metal flooring beneath his boots. Perfect for traction. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and credits changing hands. "Hunt! Hunt! Hunt!" The crowd's chant grew louder. In the front row, a group of female spectators, human and alien alike, watched him with undisguised interest. A purple-skinned Zataran winked at him suggestively. The cyborg charged, servos whining. Jack waited until the last possible moment before launching himself into the air. His right leg connected with the machine's head in a spinning kick that would have snapped a normal being's neck. The cyborg staggered, but didn't fall. "Impressive," it droned, "but futile. My cranial plating is reinforced durasteel with a titanium substructure." Jack finished standing in a crouch. "Yeah, I noticed. But what about that chest module? Looks a little loose around the edges." The cyborg's head tilted, a programmed gesture of confusion. That split-second distraction was all Jack needed. He launched into a combination of kicks that would have made a ballet dancer jealous, each strike precisely targeted at the growing gap in the machine's chest plating. The final kick connected with a satisfying crunch. Sparks flew as vital components gave way. The cyborg's eyes flickered and dimmed as it crashed to the arena floor. "Winner, Jack Iron Legs Hunt." The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Credits exchanged hands rapidly as the crowd erupted. Jack rotated his ankle, wincing slightly. That last kick had been closer than he'd like to admit. "Next time," he muttered to himself, "maybe I'll try blindfolded." A curvaceous Rix woman with iridescent skin pressed against the safety barrier. "Jack, that was amazing. Want to celebrate?" He opened his mouth to respond when his comm unit buzzed. The message was simple. High-paying job. Discreet cargo. Interested? Jack's eyes swept the arena, noting the propaganda posters that seemed to multiply daily on the station's walls. "Report all blue-skinned individuals to authorities immediately," blazed in harsh red letters above stylized images of azure-skinned humanoids. The rewards, listed below the warnings, grew larger every week. A massive Tyrotian bouncer shouldered through the crowd, his scaled skin reflecting the neon lights. "Boss wants to see you, Hunt," he growled. Jack glanced at the message, then stretched, making a show of considering it. "Tell your boss I'm busy celebrating," he said, winking at the Rix woman, who giggled. The Tyrotian didn't move. 5 million credits busy. That got Jack's attention. He kept his face neutral, but his mind raced. 5 million would buy a lot of upgrades for his ship, the Steelbird, maybe even that new quantum drive he'd been eyeing. "Lead the way, big guy." The bouncer led him through winding corridors, past gambling dens and pleasure houses. The station's underbelly was alive with activity, but people parted before them like water. Jack noticed how many of them nodded respectfully or fearfully in his direction. They entered a private lounge where a holographic fire cast artificial warmth across expensive furnishings. A well-dressed man sat in a high-backed chair, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass. "The famous Jack Hunt," the man said, not rising. "Your reputation precedes you." "Usually does," Jack replied, dropping into the chair opposite him. "Especially after I dated Princess Tusa." The man's eye twitched at the name. "Interesting." Jack filed that reaction away for later. "The job is simple," the man continued. "Transport one cryopod through the Sark's quarantine zone to coordinates we'll provide. No questions asked." Jack leaned back, boots propped on an antique table. "The Sark's zone? That's Alliance-restricted space. Plenty of patrol cruisers, automated defense systems." He grinned. "Sounds fun. But $5 million for a simple transport. What's the catch?" "No catch. Payment is half up front. The pod remains sealed until delivery." "And if I'm curious about what's inside," the man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then the bomb attached to the pod systems detonates. As I said, no questions asked." Jack whistled. "You really know how to sweet-talk a guy." He pretended to think it over, though his mind was already racing with possibilities. "When do we start?" "The pod will be delivered to your ship in 1 hour. Coordinates will follow." Back in the corridor, Jack's comm chirped again, a message from an old contact in Alliance intelligence. "Warning. Multiple contracts out on blueskins. Big players involved. Watch yourself." Jack smiled. Whatever was in that pod, it was going to make his life interesting. And interesting was exactly what he lived for. The Steelbird sat in her berth, sleek and deadly as a predator. Jack ran his hand along her hull as he approached the entry ramp. The ship had gotten him out of more tight spots than he could count, and something told him she'd be earning her keep again soon. Inside his ship, Jack checked his security feeds. The cargo hold showed a pristine cryopod being loaded by silent workers in unmarked uniforms. Too pristine. Most smuggling containers were deliberately weathered to avoid attention. This one practically screamed suspicious cargo. "Trying too hard, aren't they?" he muttered, zooming in on the pod's control panel. The bomb was there, all right, but it wasn't the only modification. A timer display caught his eye, counting down from what looked like 72 hours. Jack switched to his private comm channel. "Computer, run a background check on recent station arrivals. Focus on connections to Princess Tusa's court." "Working," the AI responded. "Alert, multiple encrypted communications detected between station officials and the royal palace of—" The ship shuddered as the docking clamps released. Jack frowned. He hadn't authorized launch prep. "Computer, lock down all—" The console erupted in sparks. Emergency lights flooded the cabin as systems began shutting down one by one. Through the viewport, Jack watched patrol ships converging on his position. "Clever," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Remote override." But they forgot one thing. His fingers flew across the backup controls, the ones he'd installed himself, isolated from the main systems. The Steelbird's engines roared to life, and artificial gravity kicked in just as the ship shot forward. "Sorry, boys," Jack broadcast on an open channel, "but Iron Legs has a date with destiny." He barrel-rolled between two patrol ships, their laser fire harmlessly crossing where he'd been seconds before. The Steelbird's superior maneuverability made up for her lack of heavy weapons. Plus, station security couldn't risk damaging whatever was in that pod. Space opened up before him as he cleared the station's immediate defense zone. The nav computer beeped, displaying the coordinates he'd been promised. They led straight into the heart of the Sark's quarantine zone. "Computer, what did you find on those background checks?" "Primary data indicates significant financial transfers from Princess Tusa's husband, Lord Varks, to multiple accounts on Omega-7. Jack's smile faded. Varks. The man who'd spent 5 years being called Princess Tusa's backup plan by court gossips. The man whose wife still reportedly kept a hollow of Jack by her bed. "Well, that explains the bomb," Jack muttered. "Computer, scan the cryopod. What are we really carrying?" Unable to penetrate shielding, however, power consumption suggests active life support for a single humanoid occupant. The ship shuddered as they hit the edge of the quarantine zone. Automated warning buoys flashed past, broadcasting danger signals on all frequencies. Whatever, or whoever, was in that pod, they were worth a lot of trouble to somebody. Jack cracked his neck and adjusted course. "All right, mysterious cargo, let's find out what makes you so special." The proximity alarm blared. 3 ships dropped out of hyperspace behind the Steelbird, their weapons already charging. Jack recognized the configuration: bounty hunter vessels, mid-grade but well-maintained. "Unidentified vessel," a gruff voice crackled over the comm. "Power down and prepare for boarding." Jack leaned back in his pilot's chair, propping his feet on the console. Boys," he said. "Didn't anyone tell you who you're chasing?" A pause, then identity confirmed. Jack Ironlegs Hunt. "The one and only," he grinned. "Now what sounds better? Going home with an embarrassing story about how I kicked your ships apart? Or going home with all your parts intact?" Another pause. Longer this time, Jack could almost hear them Googling his name on their neural network. The stories about him and Princess Tusa would be popping up, especially the one about how he'd escaped her palace guards using nothing but a serving tray and his legendary legs. You're the one who dated Princess Tusa?" The bounty hunter's voice had lost its edge. "For 3 glorious months," Jack said, checking his nails casually. "Sweet girl. Bit intense, though. Heard about what she did to that mining colony on Caris Prime? The massacre? That was her?" "Oh, yeah. 500 miners, all because someone said her new dress made her look fat." Jack shrugged. "But hey, she was having a bad day. Usually she's just adorable. We still chat sometimes." The bounty hunter's weapons powered down. Our apologies, Mr. Hunt. We didn't realize. No harm done. Give my regards to the guild." The ships peeled away, their engines flaring as they beat a hasty retreat. Jack waited until they were gone before letting out a long breath. The Tusa story always worked, mainly because it was true. Well, mostly true. It had actually been closer to 4 months and the miners had technically committed treason. But why ruin a good story with details? With the immediate threat gone, Jack set the ship on autopilot and headed for his quarters. A hot shower would help him think through the growing list of suspicious details surrounding this job. The shower's steaming water was just hitting his shoulders when cold metal pressed against his throat. "Don't move," a feminine voice commanded. The accent was exotic, with a musical quality that somehow made the threat more dangerous. Jack froze, water running down his face. "You know, most people knock first." Silence. The blade pressed harder. "Who hired you to transport me?" "Wouldn't know. Professional courtesy. No questions asked." He paused. "Though I'm starting to reconsider that policy." The intruder shifted, and Jack caught a glimpse of blue skin in his peripheral vision. His mind raced to the propaganda posters. An indigo. Well, that explained the 5 million credits. "Your life," she said. "I can sense desires, emotions. Everyone wants something." "Really?" Jack kept his voice casual. "What do I want?" There was a moment of silence, then, "That's impossible. Your primary desire is a greater challenge." She made a sound of disbelief. "Various women across the galaxy." Jack grinned. "What can I say?" "I'm a simple man." "You dated Orion, with the tentacles?" "Lovely month. Very flexible relationship." The knife wavered slightly. "You're either insane or Jack moved. His legs swept up in an arc that should have been impossible in the confined space, knocking the blade away. He spun, water spraying, to face his attacker. She was breathtaking, tall and graceful, with skin the colour of a tropical ocean and eyes like sapphires. Her features were perfectly proportioned, almost ethereal. She wore what looked like a modified stealth suit that left little to the imagination. "Name's Jack," he said, reaching for a towel. "And you are?" She backed away, dropping into a fighting stance. "Leia. And if you try anything, relax." He wrapped the towel around his waist. "If I wanted to hurt you, I would have. Besides, anyone Varks wants dead is probably worth keeping alive." Her eyes widened. "How did you know about Varks?" "Let's just say I have a complicated history with his wife." Jack grabbed a robe. "Now, how about we discuss this like civilized people? I'll make coffee. Or tea if you prefer. Though fair warning, all I have is the synthetic stuff." "Why do you call your planet Earth when it's half water?" Leia asked, studying the star charts floating above the Steelbird's navigation console. Her blue skin glowed in the holographic light, making her look almost ethereal. Jack glanced up from the ship's controls, fighting back a smile. "Same reason we park on driveways and drive on parkways. Humans aren't great at naming things." "That makes even less sense." She frowned, her sapphire eyes narrowing. "And why do you wear pants if they provide no protection in combat?" "Trust me, they provide plenty of protection, especially in the right situations." He winked at her, earning an eye roll that couldn't quite hide her amused smile. Their banter was interrupted by a warning beacon. 3 Alliance patrol ships dropped out of hyperspace ahead, their weapons charging. "Speaking of protection," Jack muttered, "hold on to something." The Steelbird dove, engines screaming as Jack pushed them beyond their rated limits. Leia grabbed the co-pilot's chair, her knuckles whitening against her blue skin. "Your legs are so strong, but your arms—" She paused as they barrel-rolled past a barrage of plasma fire. "Why the imbalance?" "Professional choice. Legs are more dramatic." Jack kicked the emergency thrusters, sending them into a spin that no sane pilot would attempt. "Besides, you should see what these babies can do on a dance floor." "Is everything a joke to you?" "Only the serious stuff." The patrol ships fell behind as Jack threaded them through an asteroid field. When they emerged on the other side, Leia was studying him with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. "You're different," she said finally. "Most humans I read are driven by fear, greed, or lust. But you—" she shook her head. "You genuinely enjoy the danger." "Life's more fun with the safety protocols off," he said, checking their coordinates. "Speaking of which, want to help me infiltrate a highly secure Alliance facility?" Her eyes widened. "You're insane." "That's what makes me charming. Besides, don't you want to know why Senator Marcus Gray wants you so badly?" The name hit her like a physical blow. "How did you—" "The transfer code's on your cryopod," Jack said, bringing up a holographic display. "They're Senate-grade encryption. Only a handful of people have that kind of clearance, and Gray's the only one with connections to both the Alliance military and Lord Varks." Leia sank into the co-pilot's chair. "Gray, he was there when they came for my people. He claimed we were a threat, that our empathic abilities could be weaponized. But that wasn't true, was it?" She shook her head, her voice bitter. "We were healers. We helped humans understand their true potential, their best selves. But some people—" She met his eyes. "Some people don't want others to see their true nature." "Like a certain senator planning a coup," Jack said. "If Gray gains control of the council—" She didn't finish the thought. Jack punched in new coordinates. "Then we'll have to stop him. But first we need proof. And I know just where to find it." The Steelbird docked at a remote refueling station on the edge of Alliance space. As Jack ran diagnostics on their damaged systems, he found himself watching Leia. She moved with an innate grace that made even simple tasks look like choreography. "I can feel you staring," she said without turning around. "Can't help it. Professional appreciation for someone who moves like a fighter." He paused. "The stunning beauty is just a bonus." She turned, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Are you flirting with me, Jack Hunt?" "Depends. Is it working?" Before she could answer, the ship's computer chimed. "Decryption complete. Origin of cryopod programming traced." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a familiar face. Lord Varks, husband of Princess Tusa, sneered from the screen as he detailed his plan. "The pod is programmed to malfunction after 72 hours, Varks's recording explained. "Hunt's reputation for impossible challenges will ensure he takes the bait. When the pod fails, both he and the Indigo die. The galaxy's greatest embarrassment and my wife's former distraction eliminated in one stroke." Jack whistled. "Somebody's jealous." Leia raised an eyebrow. "You don't seem surprised that Varks wants me dead." "Number that he's this clever about it." Jack shrugged. "That's new. Usually he just sends assassins. Terrible conversationalists, by the way." "Why does he hate you so much?" "Because everyone keeps saying his wife belongs with me instead of him. The rumours got so bad some planet started taking bets on when she'd leave him." Jack grinned. "I may have placed a few wagers myself." Leia shook her head. "You really do enjoy danger." "Speaking of danger," Jack said, his expression turning serious, "I'm making this personal. New challenge, keep you safe, expose the conspiracy, and maybe save your people, all while looking ridiculously handsome." "You're impossible." "That's my specialty." He checked their heading. "Next stop, Kepler 186F. There's an Alliance research facility there that might have the proof we need." The facility turned out to be a fortress carved into the side of a mountain. Security drones patrolled the perimeter while automated turrets tracked any movement. "This is suicide," Leia whispered as they observed from their hiding spot. "Probably," Jack said, stretching his legs, "but think how impressive it'll look when we pull it off." They moved through the facility's defences like dancers in a deadly ballet. Jack's legendary legs made short work of security droids, while Leia's empathic abilities let them avoid patrols before they got close. In the central archive, they found what they were looking for: historical records unaltered by propaganda. Videos of Indigo healers working with humans, helping them overcome trauma, achieve their potential, and find peace. "Your people weren't weapons," Jack said softly. "They were mirrors, showing humans their best selves." Leia's hands trembled as she downloaded the files. "And that terrified people like Grey," Jack said. "Leaders who built their power on fear and manipulation couldn't risk their subjects seeing the truth." "Well, now we have proof," Leia said. An alarm blared. Security forces converged on their position from all directions. "Time to go?" Leia asked, a hint of excitement in her voice. Jack grinned. "Now you're getting it." They ran. Jack's kicks cleared a path through security forces, while Leia used her abilities to create confusion in their pursuers' ranks. They moved in perfect sync, as if they'd trained together for years. Just as they reached the exit, a massive security door began to close. Jack grabbed Leia's hand. "Trust me," he said. She met his eyes. Surprisingly, yes. He pulled her close, spun, and kicked off the wall with enough force to send them sliding under the descending door. They rolled to safety as plasma bolts scarred the metal behind them. In the adrenaline-fueled moment after they stopped rolling, they found themselves face to face, breathing heavily. Jack noticed how her sapphire eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. "Your heart rate is elevated," Leia whispered. "Is that fear or—" Jack kissed her. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away. Then an explosion reminded them of their situation. "Both," he answered with a grin. Definitely both. Back on the Steel Bird, Jack established a secure connection to a private royal frequency. Princess Tusar's hologram materialized, her ethereal beauty unchanged since their time together. "Jack," her smile was radiant, "I was hoping you'd call. That outfit still fits you perfectly." Leia, monitoring communications nearby, felt her cheeks warm at the princess's suggestive tone. "Tusar," Jack's voice carried a familiar warmth. "Your husband's trying to kill me again." The princess's expression darkened. "That pathetic little—" She composed herself. "Tell me everything." As Jack explained the situation, Tusar's outrage grew. "He used royal encryption codes. My codes." She leaned forward, her silken robe shifting in ways that made Leia look away. "Jack, darling, remember that time in the palace gardens when we—" "Your Highness," Leia interrupted, stepping into view. "Perhaps we could focus on the conspiracy." Tusar's eyes lit up. "Oh, you must be the Indigo. Jack, she's gorgeous. We should all meet sometime. Discuss this thoroughly." She winked. "I'd be happy to thoroughly discuss your husband's punishment," Leia replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Tusar laughed delightedly. "Ooh, I like her. Don't worry about Varks, darlings. I'll handle him personally. That spineless fool will be under house arrest before dinner." She sighed dramatically. "Though it does make me nostalgic for the old days. Jack, remember that chase through the throne room?" Jack grinned. "How could I forget? You were—" A proximity alarm cut him off. A massive ship had dropped out of hyperspace directly above them. "Company?" Jack muttered. "Got to go, Tusar. Be safe, you two. And when this is over—" She blew a kiss. "Let's catch up properly." The transmission ended just as the ship's computer identified their visitor. Warning: matching configuration to the collector. Registered to Magnus Vale. Jack's expression hardened. "Damn. Friend of yours?" Leia asked. "Ex-partner, emphasis on ex," Jack replied, his fingers flying across the controls. "After he sold me out to a Hutt cartel. If he's here—" "Jack, baby!" A new voice boomed through their comm. "Long time, no betrayal." "Magnus," Jack said, keeping his tone light, "still flying that overcompensating heap of junk?" "Still making jokes while surrounded," Magnus laughed. "That's what I loved about working with you. But business is business. The bounty on your blue friend there? It'll set me up for life." Tractor beams locked onto the Steel Bird, drawing them toward the larger ship's hangar. Jack looked at Leia, an apology in his eyes. "Any ideas?" She smiled, but there was something dangerous in it. "You're not the only one with hidden talents." The hangar was filled with armed mercenaries when their ship was pulled in. Magnus stood at their center, arms spread in welcome. "Nothing personal, Jack, but credits are credits." Leia stepped down the boarding ramp first, her hand raised. The mercenaries tensed, weapons trained on her. "Your fears," she said softly, her eyes beginning to glow. "They're so loud." The change was instant. Hardened killers began to scream, dropping their weapons as their worst nightmares played before their eyes. One saw flesh-eating parasites crawling under his skin. Another relived his near-death in the vacuum of space. Magnus staggered back. What are you doing to them?" "Showing them their truths," Leia answered. "Would you like to see yours?" Jack chose that moment to make his entrance, dropping from above the ramp into a spinning kick that took out 3 mercenaries at once. He moved through the chaos like a force of nature, his legs delivering devastating combinations. While Leia's power kept their enemies paralyzed with terror, Jack called, "You know what's funny, Agnes?" as he fought. "I actually missed this kind of thing." A mercenary managed to shake off enough fear to raise his weapon. Leia intensified his terror until he saw the gun turning into a writhing mass of serpents in his hands. "Your hidden talents are impressive," Jack commented, ducking under a wild swing. "So are yours," she replied, watching him dispatch 2 attackers with a single spinning kick. Magnus broke and ran for the emergency shuttle. Jack started to pursue, but Leia caught his arm. "Let him go," she said. "We've got bigger problems." She was right. The ship's computer was announcing Senator Gray's personal fleet approaching their position. "Back to the bird?" Jack asked. Leia nodded, then surprised him by pulling him into a fierce kiss. "For luck," she explained with a smile. "We should test our luck more often." "I have a terrible idea," Jack announced as Senator Gray's fleet surrounded them. Leia looked up from the weapons console, her blue skin reflecting the emergency lights. "Worse than dating a princess with execution privileges?" "Much worse," he grinned. "I'm going to get captured." "That's not a plan. That's suicide." "Exactly. Why they won't expect it." Jack pulled up a holographic map of Gray's personal station. "While they're focused on me and my incredible legs, you'll take the steel bird and infiltrate Gray's private quarters." He pointed to a secured section. "The evidence we found, combined with your abilities, could expose everything." Leia studied him, her sapphire eyes intense. "You're serious." "Always am about the ridiculous stuff," he winked. "Besides, I've been wanting to try fighting an entire security force without guns. Could be fun." "You're insane." "But—" She was smiling. "That's why we work so well together." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "Gray's men will be expecting both of us to be on the ship when I surrender. Alone, they'll be so focused on interrogating me about your location that they won't notice the steel bird slipping away." "And what about the station's defences?" Jack pulled up another diagram. "Remember those security codes Verax used? Tusa just sent us a complete set. Royal encryption will get you through the outer perimeter. After that," he gestured to her, "you have talents of your own." Their eyes met, and for a moment the urgency of their situation faded. Leia reached up, touching his face. "If you die doing this," she whispered, "I'll never forgive you. Please. Death is terrified of my kickboxing." He kissed her quickly. "Now, let's give them a show." "The station isn't just Gray's headquarters," Jack explained, highlighting sections of the hologram. "It's where the Galactic Council meets. More importantly, it houses the central broadcasting hub, direct access to every major communication channel in Alliance space." "And you think we can just walk in?" Leia's skepticism was clear. "Not walk, but Gra paranoia works against him." Jack zoomed in on a specific section. "See this? Private docking bay reserved for his personal yacht. Same royal encryption as the cryopod." He grinned. "He's got a live council session scheduled in 3 hours." Understanding dawned in Leia's eyes. "The entire council, plus media representatives from every major system," she said. "One broadcast, one revelation of his true desires, and everything changes." He paused. "But the timing has to be perfect. That's why I need to keep them distracted by getting captured, by putting on the greatest show they've ever seen." Jack's eyes lit up with that dangerous gleam she'd come to know. "Gray's ego won't let him resist interrogating me personally. He'll want to know where you are, where the evidence is, while I'm actually in his private quarters, accessing his personal files and the broadcasting system." Jack nodded. "Between the evidence we found and your abilities, you can show everyone not just what Gray did to your people, but what he plans to do to the Council." A proximity warning flashed. Gray's flagship was moving into position. "One problem," Leia said. "How do I get from his quarters to the Council chamber?" Jack's smile turned wicked. "Remember those maintenance tunnels we used on Kepler 186F? Most space stations use standardized designs, including," he highlighted a network of passages running through the station's core service corridors, "this. Bingo. Gray's paranoia. Means heavy security at all official entrances. But maintenance, that's beneath his notice." The comm crackled. "Unidentified vessel, this is Senator Grey's personal fleet. Surrender or be destroyed." Jack stretched his legs. "Time to dance." "You know what to do." Leia pulled him into a fierce kiss. "Don't die." "Wouldn't dream of it. I still haven't taught you why humans wear socks." He moved toward the airlock, then paused. "Oh, and Leia, when you reach the council chamber." His expression turned serious. "Make them feel everything, every fear, every lie, every death. Make them understand what it means to be indigo." She nodded, her eyes glowing with barely contained power. "They'll understand. I promise. That's my girl." He hit the comm. "Senator Grey, Jack Hunt here. Love what you've done with the fleet. Very imposing. Mind if I come aboard? I've got this fascinating story about why you shouldn't trust encrypted cryopods." The docking procedure was a symphony of overwhelming force. 3 heavily armed shuttles surrounded Jack's exit point, while armoured troops lined every approach. In the centre of it all stood Senator Grey, tall, aristocratic, and radiating cold authority. "The famous Jack Hunt," Grey's voice dripped with condescension. "I expected someone more impressive." Jack stepped forward, hands raised lazily above his head. "Sorry to disappoint. I left my impressive pants in my other spaceship. Where is the Indigo?" "You know, funny story about that." Jack's legs snapped up suddenly, catching the nearest guard under the chin. The man flew backward as chaos erupted. Grey's voice cut through the confusion. "Hold your fire. I want him alive." Jack moved like liquid lightning, his legs creating a devastating dance of destruction. Guards flew in all directions as he worked his way through their ranks, each kick precisely calculated to disable rather than kill. "I have to ask," Jack called out between strikes. "Did you really think Vex could plan something this complex?" He swept another guard's legs out. "The man can barely plan dinner without his wife's help." Grey's face darkened. "Where is the Indigo?" "Probably halfway to the outer rim by now," Jack grinned, ducking under a stun blast. "Or maybe she's right behind you. Hard to keep track these days." Meanwhile, on the other side of the station, the Steelbird slipped through the defence grid using Toosa's codes. Leia guided the ship with practiced precision, her heart racing as she approached Grey's private docking bay. Back in the landing bay, Jack had worked his way through most of the security force. Bodies lay groaning around him, victims of his legendary legs. "Impressive," Grey admitted, drawing a sleek pistol, "but futile." The stun blast caught Jack in the chest, sending him crashing to the deck. As darkness crept in at the edges of his vision, he smiled. "You know what's really funny?" he managed. "I'm not even the dangerous one." Leia moved through Grey's private quarters like a ghost, her empathic abilities letting her avoid the few guards posted inside. The evidence from Kepler 186F was already uploading to the station's main computer while she made her way toward the maintenance access that would lead her to the council chamber. She paused at a terminal, checking the station's security feeds. The sight of Jack being dragged to an interrogation cell made her chest tight, but she forced herself to focus. He was buying her time. She couldn't waste it. The council chamber's service entrance was exactly where Jack said it would be. As she prepared to make her move, she smiled, remembering his words. "Make them understand," she whispered. "Oh, they will." In the interrogation cell, Jack hung suspended in a containment field, his trademark grin still in place despite the bruises forming on his face. "Your reputation for resilience is well earned," Grey said, pacing before him, "but unnecessary. Simply tell me where she is, and this can end." "You know what I don't understand?" Jack flexed his legs experimentally against the restraints. "Why are interrogation rooms always so poorly lit? Is mood lighting really necessary for torture?" Grey's hand shot out, striking Jack across the face. "You think this is a game?" Life's a game, Senator. You're just a really bad player. Jack spat blood. By the way, how's the council session going? The question made Gray pause. What do you know about the council session? Oh, nothing much. Just wondering if they've started discussing the interesting files being uploaded to their data pads right now. Gray's face went pale. He rushed to a computer terminal, his fingers flying across the controls. Impossible. My security is very impressive, Jack agreed. Almost as impressive as Princess Tusa's encryption codes. You remember Tusa, right? Lovely woman, terrible temper. Really doesn't like people using her codes without permission. In the council chamber, Leia emerged silently from the maintenance access just as alarms began blaring throughout the station. The gathered council members, representatives from every major system in the Alliance, were already murmuring about the mysterious files appearing on their screens. Distinguished members of the council, she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. Her blue skin seemed to glow under the lights as all eyes turned to her. I am one of the last of the Indigo, and I am here to show you the truth. Her eyes began to glow with inner light as she released her full power. The chamber filled with gasps as each council member began to experience not just their own deepest fears and desires, but those of everyone around them. The true nature of Gray's conspiracy unfolded in their minds like a terrible flower blooming. Feel the truth, Leia commanded. Feel what was done to my people. Feel the lies that were told. Feel the deaths of thousands whose only crime was helping others see their best selves. Back in the interrogation room, Gray's communication device erupted with urgent messages. His face contorted with rage as he realized what was happening. Kill him, he ordered the guards, then find the Indigo. Jack's restraint suddenly deactivated. He dropped to the floor in a crouch, his legs coiled like springs. Sorry, Senator, he said, rising smoothly, but I've got a council meeting to attend. What followed was pure chaos. Jack's legs became instruments of destruction as he fought his way through the station's corridors, leaving a trail of unconscious guards in his wake. Every security measure, every locked door, every defensive position fell before the combination of Tusa's codes and his unstoppable advance. He burst into the council chamber just as Leia was finishing her revelation. The sight of her standing there, powerful and radiant, making the most powerful beings in the galaxy experience the truth of their own hearts, took his breath away. Did I miss anything good? He called out. Leia turned, a brilliant smile lighting her face. Just the part where Gray's shot caught her in the shoulder, spinning her around. The senator stood in the doorway, his elegant facade cracked by murderous rage. Broadcasting now on all frequencies, the station's AI announced, its monotone voice echoing through every speaker in Alliance space. Emergency override protocol engaged. Gray's eyes widened in horror as he realized what was happening. Every screen, every holopad, every communication device across the galaxy was now receiving the complete data dump. The truth about the Indigo, the evidence of his conspiracy, and most damning of all, the live feed from the council chamber. You can't stop this, Leia said, straightening despite her wounded shoulder. Her voice carried not just through the chamber, but to billions of viewers across the stars. The truth about the Indigo, about what you did to us, about what we really are, everyone will know. Then they'll all die, Gray muttered. Gray raised his weapon again, but Jack was already moving, his legs swept up in an arc that seemed to defy physics, catching Gray's wrist with devastating precision. The gun went flying as Jack followed through with a combination that sent the senator crashing into his own guards. Always wanted to kick a senator, Jack quipped. Cross that off the bucket list. But Gray wasn't finished. He pulled a hidden device from his coat. If I fall, I'm taking you all with me. This station's reactor, ... Leia's eyes flared with power. Gray froze, his face contorting in terror as she forced him to experience every moment of fear, pain, and loss he had inflicted on others. Feel it, she commanded. Feel what you did to my people. Feel what you planned for the Council. Feel the truth you tried to hide. The Council members watched in stunned silence as Gray collapsed, overwhelmed by the weight of his own actions. Across the galaxy, billions witnessed the moment when one of the Alliance's most powerful leaders was revealed for what he truly was. The Indigo were never a threat, Leia continued, addressing not just the Council, but the entire galaxy. We were healers, teachers, guides. We showed people their true potential, helped them face their fears, and embrace their best selves. She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. And we still can. Jack moved to her side, supporting her injured shoulder. I'd say that's a pretty good start to changing the galaxy. The Council chamber erupted in chaos as members began calling for immediate action. The arrest of Gray and his conspirators, the repeal of anti-Indigo laws, formal apologies to the survivors. Leia turned to Jack, her sapphire eyes bright with emotion. We did it. You did it, he corrected. I just kicked some people very impressively. Speaking of impressive, she pulled him close with her good arm. Want to help me search the galaxy for more of my people? Sounds dangerous. Probably impossible. Definitely illegal in some sectors. He grinned. When do we start? Their kiss was broadcast to several billion viewers before someone finally thought to cut the feed. 1 month later, the Steel Bird cut through hyperspace, its systems humming with recent installed upgrades. In the cockpit, Jack and Leia studied a map of unexplored territories. Another distress signal, Leia said, highlighting a distant point. Same frequency my people used to use. Could be a trap, Jack noted, his feet propped casually on the console. Definitely a trap. Probably impossible odds. Almost certainly deadly. They grinned at each other, setting in course. Now, Jack said, punching in the coordinates. Leia leaned back in her co-pilot's chair, studying him with amusement. You know, I still don't understand why humans wear socks. Tell you what, Jack replied, pulling her into his lap. After we rescue your people, deal with whatever deadly trap is waiting, and probably kick some more bad guys, I'll explain all about socks. Promise, cross my heart. Though you might want to ask Tusa too. She has some interesting theories about human footwear. Leia groaned. Please stop bringing up the princess. Jealous of someone who had to settle for your younger, less experienced self? She traced a finger along his jaw. Hardly. The ship's computer chimed with an incoming message. Another rescue mission. Another impossible challenge. Another chance to make the galaxy a little better. Ready to save the universe again? Jack asked. Leia's eyes glowed with that now familiar power. Always. But first she kissed him deeply. I think we have some time before we reach our destination. I love the way you think. Jack swept her up in his arms. Computer, set autopilot, and engage privacy protocols. As they left the cockpit, Leia couldn't resist one last question. Seriously, though, why do you need 2 socks? Jack's laughter echoed through the ship as they disappeared into their quarters, ready for whatever adventure tomorrow might bring. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. The truth about the Indigo led to a renaissance of empathic healing and understanding. More survivors emerged from hiding, welcome now as teachers and guides. Princess Tusa divorced her husband and became a vocal supporter of Indigo rights, though she never quite stopped flirting with Jack during diplomatic calls. And somewhere out there, a blue-skinned empath and a man with legendary legs continued their mission, taking on impossible challenges and making the universe a more interesting place, one adventure at a time. Epilogue, Royal Reunions and New Beginnings. The royal palace of New Venus sparkled like a diamond in the evening light, Princess Tusa, recently single and more radiant than ever, had insisted on hosting a small private dinner to celebrate the successful rescue of another group of indigo survivors. Small, in royal terms, meant only 50 servants and a mere 3 courses. "Jack, darling," Tusa practically purred as she descended the grand staircase, her flowing gown leaving little to the imagination. "And the lovely Leia, you're both looking deliciously well." Jack grinned. "Tusa, still making every entrance count, I see." "Only for special guests," she embraced them both, lingering perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. "Come, the private dining room awaits. I have so many questions about your recent adventures." Leia exchanged an amused glance with Jack. In the month since the downfall, she'd grown accustomed to Tusa's flirtatious nature and even found herself enjoying it. The private dining room could have hosted a small army. Tusa reclined on a luxurious couch, gesturing for them to join her. "So," she said, sipping something sparkly and probably worth more than most ships, "tell me everything, especially the parts unsuitable for public broadcast." "Actually," Leia said, her blue skin seeming to glow in the soft light, "we have some news of our own." Jack took her hand, his trademark grin softer than usual. "I'm pregnant," Leia announced. Tusa's delighted squeal probably reached orbit. "Oh, this is perfect. A baby. Part human, part indigo." Her eyes sparkled mischievously. "With those genes, it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. Not to mention those legs." "We were hoping," Leia continued, trying not to blush, "you might consider being the godmother." "Try and stop me." Tusa clapped her hands in delight. "Oh, the parties we'll throw, the adventures we'll have." She swept off to personally select the wine. "Well, not for you, darling," she winked at Leia, "but Jack and I will drink your share." As Tusa disappeared, Jack pulled Leia closer. "Having second thoughts about the godmother thing?" "Not at all," Leia smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Our child is going to need all the strong, slightly crazy women in their life they can get." "Speaking of crazy," Jack's eyes twinkled, "want to tell her it's twins?" Leia laughed. "Let's save something for dessert." Somewhere in the galaxy, new adventures waited. But for now, in this moment, everything was perfect. Even if Tusa did spend the rest of the evening making increasingly outrageous suggestions for baby names. And as for those socks, well, their child would just have to figure that out for themselves. The end, dear listener, so a guy with legendary legs and a blue-skinned empath walk into a galactic conspiracy. No, this isn't the start of a joke, but it could be. Between Jack's impossible kicks and Leia's ability to read desires, seriously, who wouldn't want that power at a poker game? This story became something more than just another space adventure. Like Jack's relationship with Princess Tusa, some things are better left to the imagination, though I suspect Tusa would disagree. And yes, Jack finally explained the sock thing to Leia, but that's classified information, right up there with why humans park on driveways and drive on parkways. Thanks for coming along for the ride. May your challenges be impossible, your loves be blue, or whatever colour works for you, and your legs be legendary. Cheers. The author P.S. Any resemblance to actual princesses who like to flirt with roguish spaceship captains is purely coincidental, mostly.